This story is titled, Rich Stepmom Banned Me from Using Our Family Pool Because I Embarrassed Her Perfect Daughter the Day of Her Pool Party Fashion Show Changed Everything. Growing up in Scottsdale, Arizona, I, Emma, 17F, never imagined my life would become a twisted mess of family drama and revenge. Everything changed when my dad married Veronica, 42F, 3 years ago. She was the epitome of new money, flashy, obsessed with status, and determined to make everyone know just how wealthy she was. But the real problem wasn't Veronica, it was her daughter Madison, 17F, my stepsister who made Regina George look like a saint. Before my mom passed away from cancer when I was 12, we were a normal middle-class family. Dad, 45M, worked as a high school physics teacher, and we lived in a modest house with a small above-ground pool that brought me endless joy during those scorching Arizona summers. I was on the school swim team, and that pool was my sanctuary. Mom used to say I was part mermaid, and honestly, being in the water was the only place I truly felt like myself. Then came the whirlwind romance. Dad met Veronica at some charity gala where he was chaperoning students. She was recently divorced from her tech millionaire ex-husband and had set her sights on my quiet, unassuming father. Within 6 months, we moved into her mansion in the most exclusive part of Scottsdale, complete with a resort-style pool that would make any 5-star hotel jealous. At first, I thought living with Madison might be okay. We were the same age, both juniors at Desert Mountain High School, and I naively hoped we might become friends. But Madison had other plans. At school, she was the queen bee, president of the student council, and captain of the cheerleading squad. At home, she was Veronica's perfect princess, who could do no wrong. Meanwhile, I was the awkward swimmer girl who preferred chlorine-damaged hair and one-piece swimsuits to designer clothes and perfectly styled locks. The pool became a point of contention almost immediately. Madison hated that I would practice my swimming there every morning before school. She complained that my splashing ruined her beauty sleep, even though her room was on the opposite side of the house. But things really started to spiral when Madison joined the swim team this year, not because she loved swimming, but because Tyler, 18M, the guy I'd been crushing on since freshman year, was the team captain. I can still remember the exact moment everything began to unravel. It was 2 weeks ago, when Madison came home with a brilliant idea of hosting a pool party fashion show for her 17th birthday. Little did I know, this event would become the catalyst for a series of events that would change everything in our carefully curated facade of a perfect blended family. The week before Madison's pool party fashion show, things took a dark turn. I overheard her and Veronica whispering in the kitchen late one night, while I was grabbing water after swim practice. They were hunched over Madison's laptop, scrolling through what looked like designer swimwear websites. I was about to leave when I heard my name mentioned, followed by muffled giggles that made my stomach turn. The next morning, I discovered all my practice swimsuits had mysteriously disappeared from the pool house locker where I kept them. When I confronted Madison, she put on her best innocent face and suggested that maybe the pool maintenance guy had thrown them out by mistake, since they were so old and worn out anyway. I knew she was lying. I'd seen that same fake sympathetic expression too many times before. With my competition swimsuits missing, I was forced to wear my backup suit to school practice. It wasn't until I dove into the pool that I realized something was wrong. The suit, which I hadn't worn in months, had been tampered with. The fabric had been strategically altered with some kind of chemical that turned nearly transparent when wet. I only realized what was happening when I heard the snickers and saw phone cameras pointed in my direction. Tyler, who was teaching the junior swimmers in the next lane, immediately threw me his team jacket, but the damage was already done. By lunch period, Madison had orchestrated a full-scale humiliation campaign. She'd started a group chat sharing the photos, claiming she was so worried about her poor stepsister, who couldn't afford proper swimwear. My social media was flooded with cruel messages and thinly veiled jokes about my exhibition performance at practice. That evening, when I tried to tell Dad what happened, Veronica intercepted the conversation. She spun this elaborate tale about how I was just jealous of Madison's upcoming fashion show and was trying to create drama. Then she dropped the bomb. She was banning me from using the pool until I could learn to behave appropriately and not create embarrassing situations. The irony of being banned from my own backyard pool for something Madison had orchestrated was almost too much to bear. But what really broke me was overhearing Madison on the phone later that night, laughing about how she'd finally gotten rid of the pool rat, just in time for her perfect party. She mentioned something about Tyler being her next target, and how by the time her fashion show was over, she'd have everything she wanted. I spent the night in my room, tears streaming down my face, looking at old photos of Mom and me by our modest above-ground pool. That's when I noticed something in the background of one of Madison's latest Instagram stories. My missing swimsuits were visible in the corner of her room, peeking out from under her bed. As I stared at that image, something inside me snapped. The sadness and hurt crystallized into something harder, colder. If Madison wanted to play games with a pool, she had no idea what a girl who'd spent her whole life in the water was capable of. The next few days were a blur of careful observation and planning. While banned from the pool, I spent my time watching Madison's preparations for her fashion show from my bedroom window. That's when I noticed something interesting about Carmen, 38F, our housekeeper, who had worked for Veronica for the past 5 years. She seemed to be paying special attention to Madison's activities, taking photos on her phone when she thought no one was looking. One afternoon, while Madison was at cheerleading practice, Carmen approached me in the kitchen. Without saying much, she showed me her phone. It was filled with evidence of Madison's schemes. There were photos of Madison tampering with my swimsuits in the laundry room, screenshots of texts to her friends bragging about the pool incident, and even a video of her and Veronica laughing about the whole situation. Carmen explained that she'd been documenting Madison's bullying for months, disgusted by how they treated their household staff and me. But the real bombshell came when Carmen revealed that Madison's fashion show wasn't just about showing off by the pool. She'd overheard Madison talking to her friends about how she planned to announce her new position as captain of the swim team at the party, a position that was supposed to be mine based on performance and seniority. Apparently, Veronica had made a substantial donation to the athletic department to secure Madison's captaincy. What made my blood boil even more was discovering that Madison had been spreading vicious rumors about me to Tyler. She'd shown him doctored text screenshots making it seem like I'd been trash-talking the swim team and him specifically. No wonder he'd been distant lately, barely looking at me during the few practices I still attended. Carmen also mentioned that she'd seen Madison testing different chemicals in the pool when no one was around, supposedly practicing for some special effects she planned for the fashion show. The pool maintenance record showed unusual adjustments to the chemical balance over the past week, but Veronica had brushed off the pool guy's concerns with her usual wave of dismissal. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about how Madison was systematically destroying everything I cared about: my reputation, my position on the swim team, my relationship with Tyler, and even my safe space in the water. But thanks to Carmen's evidence, I now had something Madison didn't: proof of her true nature and knowledge of her plans. As I lay in bed, listening to the distant sound of the pool's filtration system, a plan started forming in my mind. Madison wanted special effects for her fashion show? Well, I knew more about pool chemistry than anyone in this house, thanks to years of helping Mom maintain our old pool. With Carmen's help and my knowledge, I could give Madison exactly the kind of show she deserved, one that would expose her true colors to everyone. The day before the fashion show, the mansion was buzzing with activity. Veronica had hired an army of event planners, who were transforming our backyard into what looked like a Miami beach club. White leather loungers surrounded the pool, crystal chandeliers hung from newly installed pergolas, and a floating runway had been set up across the water's surface. Madison was practically vibrating with excitement as she directed workers where to place the professional lighting equipment. While everyone was distracted with the preparations, I put my plan into motion. Carmen had managed to get me a copy of the pool house key, and during her lunch break, she created a diversion by accidentally spilling coffee on Madison's original fashion show outfit. While Madison and Veronica were having a meltdown over the designer swimsuit emergency, I slipped into the pool house unnoticed. Years of swimming had taught me everything about pool maintenance, and Mom had always insisted I understand the chemistry behind it. I knew exactly how to adjust the chemical balance without setting off the automated monitoring system. Nothing dangerous. I wasn't going to stoop to Madison's level of tampering with swimsuits, but I had something much more elegant in mind. I also found my stolen practice suits hidden in a box marked pool cleaning supplies. They still reeked of the chemicals Madison had used to tamper with them. I carefully collected samples and took photos of the labels on the bottles I found nearby. This wasn't just about revenge anymore. It was about having evidence of what they'd done. Later that afternoon, I overheard Madison on the phone with someone from the swim team. She was gloating about how she'd be announcing her new captain position at the party, and how Tyler had already agreed to be her date for the upcoming school dance. She mentioned that she convinced him I was just a jealous wannabe who couldn't handle losing the captain spot fair and square. My hand shook with anger as I listened, but I forced myself to stay calm. Tomorrow would change everything. That evening, as I sat at the mandatory family dinner, Veronica's attempt at maintaining our perfect family image, I watched Madison rehearse her runway walk between bites of her kale salad. She kept shooting me smug looks, probably thinking about how I'd have to watch her big moment from the sidelines. Dad was absorbed in his phone, as usual, completely oblivious to the tension. Veronica was rattling off the guest list. Apparently half the school would be there, including the local press she'd invited to cover the social event of the season. I excused myself early, claiming I had homework. As I headed upstairs, I heard Veronica remind me that I was expected to help serve refreshments at the party, since I was banned from the pool area itself. Perfect, that was exactly what I needed. Sometimes, the best revenge doesn't require elaborate schemes, just the right knowledge and perfect timing. Tomorrow, Madison's fashion show would certainly be memorable, just not in the way she planned. The day of the fashion show arrived with perfect Arizona weather, not a cloud in the sky, and temperature hovering around 85 degrees. By noon, our backyard was transformed into what looked like a scene from a reality TV show. Professional photographers were setting up their equipment, caterers were arranging elaborate displays of food and drinks, and Madison's friends were gathering in the pool house, giggling as they got ready. I played my part perfectly, wearing the plain black server's uniform Veronica had chosen for me, blending into the background as I helped set up the refreshment stations. Carmen and I exchanged knowing glances as we worked, both aware that the pool's chemistry was slowly but surely changing with the rising temperature. The best part? The changes would be completely invisible until the exact right moment. Madison made her grand entrance around 2 p.m., wearing a white designer bikini that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent. She was surrounded by her entourage, including Tyler, who looked uncomfortable but trapped in Madison's orbit. The sight of his arm around her waist made my stomach turn, but I kept my face neutral as I offered them champagne flutes filled with sparkling cider. Veronica was in her element, playing the perfect hostess as she welcomed local Instagram influencers and even a reporter from the Arizona Republic. She'd orchestrated everything to maximize exposure for Madison's debut into society, as she kept calling it. Dad stood awkwardly by the grill, clearly out of his element among the social elite of Scottsdale. The fashion show portion was scheduled to start at 3 p.m., when the sun would be in the perfect position to illuminate the pool surface. Madison had planned to make her swim team captain announcement as the grand finale, after she and her friends modeled their designer swimwear on the floating runway. What she didn't know was that I had timed everything precisely with the sun's position and the pool's slowly changing chemistry. As I watched her strut around the edge of the pool, showing off to Tyler and preening for the cameras, I thought about all the times she'd humiliated me, all the lies she'd told, all the things she'd stolen from me. In less than an hour, everyone would see the real Madison, and no amount of money or social influence would be able to hide it. Just before the show started, Carmen slipped me my phone, which she'd been keeping hidden with the evidence we collected. Everything was set up perfectly. Now all we had to do was wait for Madison's moment in the spotlight to become something entirely different than what she'd planned. Sometimes karma needs a little help with timing, and I was more than happy to provide it. The fashion show began with Madison's friends taking turns walking the floating runway. The DJ was playing upbeat music, cameras were flashing, and everyone seemed impressed by the spectacle. I kept checking my watch, knowing that the pool's chemistry was reaching its critical point as the sun continued to heat the water. What nobody else knew was that I had carefully timed a combination of completely safe chemical reactions. The pool maintenance company had already added certain minerals to help with clarity, and I had subtly adjusted the balance. When these elements would react with the afternoon sun hitting the water at just the right angle, they would create a unique effect on anything white that touched the water. Madison insisted on going last, making a big show of preparing for her grand finale. She'd changed into an even more expensive white designer swimsuit, this one reportedly costing thousands of dollars. The same type of fabric, I noticed with satisfaction, that was particularly reactive to the chemical combination now present in the pool. As she began her walk down the floating runway, everything was going according to her plan. The cameras were focused on her, Tyler was watching attentively, and Veronica was beaming with pride. Madison stopped halfway across the pool for her planned pose, and that's when it happened, exactly on schedule. A small wave from someone jumping into the pool on the far end, courtesy of one of Madison's friends she'd been mean to, rocked the floating runway slightly. Madison, who'd been more focused on posing than balancing, stumbled just enough for her foot to dip into the water. At first, she didn't notice anything, but as she continued her walk, the chemical reaction began to take effect. Her pristine white swimsuit started changing color wherever water had splashed on it. But this wasn't just any color change. The chemicals in the pool were reacting with the same type of fabric treatment Madison had used to tamper with my practice suits. The result? Her expensive swimsuit began developing very visible patches that revealed the truth about her tampering with my suits. The crowd's enthusiastic applause turned to confused murmurs as more people noticed what was happening. Madison, still unaware, continued her rehearsed poses until she caught sight of her reflection in the pool. Her face went from confident smile to horror in seconds as she realized her swimsuit was now displaying clear evidence of her sabotage. The same chemical formula she'd used on my suits was now revealing itself on her own expensive designer piece. Just as planned, Carmen had positioned herself perfectly to capture everything on video, while I stood ready with the final piece of evidence, the samples from my tampered suits that matched exactly what was happening to Madison's swimsuit now. The local news cameras were rolling, capturing every moment of Madison's fashion show turning into an unintended confession of her bullying. Chaos erupted around the pool. Madison stood frozen on the runway, her carefully crafted image literally dissolving before everyone's eyes. Veronica rushed forward, trying to damage control the situation, but her high heels slipped on the wet pool deck, sending her designer purse into the water. As she reached to grab it, dozens of photos spilled out, including printouts of the doctored text messages she and Madison had created to show Tyler. Tyler, who had been standing near the deep end, picked up some of the floating papers before Veronica could reach them. His expression changed from confusion to anger as he read through the manufactured conversations. The same messages Madison had used to convince him I was trash-talking the team were now floating in the pool, the ink running to reveal the original screenshots underneath showing how they'd been edited. Carmen chose this perfect moment to step forward, her phone displaying the video evidence of Madison tampering with my suits in the laundry room. The local news reporter, sensing a much bigger story than a simple fashion show, was already taking notes. Madison's friends, many of whom had suffered from her bullying but had been too afraid to speak up, began sharing their own stories with the gathered crowd. But the biggest shock came when the swim team coach, Mrs. Reynolds, 52F, who had been invited as a courtesy, stepped forward. She had received an anonymous email earlier that day, courtesy of Carmen, with proof of Veronica's attempted bribe to secure Madison's captain position. In front of everyone, she announced that the position would be awarded based on merit, as it should have been all along. Dad finally seemed to wake up from his oblivious state. He looked from Madison's ruined swimsuit to my calm face, to the evidence floating in the pool, and I saw the moment realization hit him. The carefully maintained illusion of our perfect blended family was shattered, just like Madison's reputation. The party dissolved into chaos as guests began leaving, many of them recording everything on their phones. Madison ran to the pool house in tears, leaving a trail of chemically revealed evidence behind her. Veronica was simultaneously trying to stop people from taking photos and salvage what was left of her social standing, but it was too late. The truth had quite literally come to the surface, and no amount of money or social influence could hide it now. The aftermath of the fashion show disaster stretched into the evening. After most guests had left, Dad finally found his voice and demanded a family meeting in the living room. For the first time since marrying Veronica, he took control of the situation. Carmen had quietly provided him with all the evidence she'd collected over the months, and he spent hours going through everything. The following week was a whirlwind of changes. The local news ran a story not about a glamorous fashion show, but about privilege, bullying, and the lengths some people would go to maintain their social status. Madison's previous victims started coming forward with their own stories, creating a ripple effect throughout Desert Mountain High School. Veronica's attempted bribe of the athletic department triggered an internal investigation at school. Madison was removed from the swim team entirely, and I was officially instated as team captain, a position I had earned through years of dedication and hard work. Tyler, feeling horrible about believing Madison's lies, came to apologize. He admitted that he had only agreed to date her because she had threatened to spread rumors about his family's financial problems if he refused. The most significant change came when Dad finally saw Veronica and Madison for who they really were. He discovered that Veronica had been secretly draining his personal savings account, which held the money from my mom's life insurance policy, money that was supposed to be for my college education. That was the final straw. Dad moved us out of the mansion that weekend, back to our old neighborhood. Our former house was available for rent, and by some stroke of luck, or perhaps karma, we were able to move back in. The familiar sight of our modest above-ground pool brought tears to my eyes, not of sadness this time, but of relief. Dad spent an entire day helping me clean and prepare it for swimming, just like we used to do with Mom. Carmen, who had quit working for Veronica, found a much better position as a house manager for a kind elderly couple who lived nearby. She would often stop by to check on us, and we developed a genuine friendship based on mutual respect, something that had been sorely lacking in Veronica's household. The story spread through Scottsdale's wealthy circles, and Veronica's carefully crafted social status crumbled. Several other families came forward with similar experiences of manipulation and bullying, and suddenly the queen bees of Scottsdale found themselves facing a long overdue reckoning. A month has passed since the infamous pool party, and life has found a new rhythm. Dad filed for divorce from Veronica, citing financial fraud among other things. He's slowly returning to his old self, the caring, attentive father I remember from before. We spend our evenings by our modest pool, talking about Mom and healing from the past 3 years. The swim team is thriving under my captainship. Tyler and I have been spending more time together, but not dating. We both need time to process everything that happened. Instead, we've developed a solid friendship based on our shared love of swimming and our experience with Madison's manipulation. He's been helping me coach younger swimmers, and watching their progress has been incredibly rewarding. Last week, I ran into Madison at a local coffee shop. She looked different, stripped of her designer clothes and queen bee attitude. She was working as a barista, something Veronica would have considered beneath him just a month ago. Our eyes met briefly, but neither of us spoke. I felt no satisfaction or triumph, just a quiet understanding that karma has its own way of teaching life lessons. Carmen and I meet for lunch every Sunday. She's thriving in her new job, finally appreciated for her integrity and hard work. She helped me set up a website that connects teens who've experienced bullying, creating a support network that's already making a difference in our community. The local news did a follow-up story about it, focusing on the positive changes that emerged from the fashion show incident. Dad managed to recover most of my college fund through legal action, and I've even earned a partial swimming scholarship for next year. Our above-ground pool might not be as fancy as Veronica's, but it's more than enough for practicing my strokes and teaching young kids in the neighborhood how to swim. Sometimes at night, when I'm doing my final laps, I think about how Mom would have handled all of this. She always taught me that revenge isn't about destruction, it's about restoration. By exposing the truth, I didn't just get even with Madison and Veronica. I restored balance and helped others find their voice. The other day, I found my old swim team photo from before Dad married Veronica. I'm standing by our modest pool, grinning in my simple practice suit, with Mom and Dad beaming beside me. I've put it on my desk as a reminder that happiness doesn't come from designer swimsuits or infinity pools. It comes from being true to yourself and standing up for what's right. As for the chemical reaction I used at the fashion show, let's just say those years of helping Mom with pool maintenance and paying attention in chemistry class paid off in ways she never could have imagined. I think she would have been proud, not of the revenge itself, but of how I used knowledge and truth to fight back against injustice. Sometimes, the best revenge isn't about getting even, it's about getting free.